Take projection.
Welcome to Check Your Shelf, the official book podcast of the Alabama Take Network. I'm your host, Jamie Hanna, and this month I'm super excited to have media specialist and Alabama Take book writer Laura Lott with us. Hello, Laura.
Hello, hello.
So tell us a little about yourself.
Well, like you said, I'm a library media specialist at an elementary school outside of Montgomery. I live in Montgomery, but I'm from Athens, Alabama, which is right outside of Madison here. And I got to Montgomery through Tuscaloosa, so where I went to school, and I got a job. Yeah, Roll Tide. And I got a job, and I've been in Montgomery for about 14 years now. So that's awesome. About it. And I read a lot. That's about it.
Now, for listeners who may not know, a school media specialist is like a school librarian.
Yeah, it's a fancy term for a school librarian because, I mean, they also have us do technology and stuff like that. And, like, I'm over the Instagram thing for the school, and so
it's a certification, right? Like you had to, okay.
Yeah, like I get a master's degree.
That's what when I was in library school, I remember like at orientation, they were just kind of like, okay, public librarians, you can take whatever. Academic librarians, you can take whatever. Media specialist, so help me God, if you veer off this course track, you will set yourself back 2 years. And it just seemed really and also the media specialists in my class were always the ones who got the most stressed out when it was time to like register for classes because they had to be in certain things.
Yeah, because it was one way or, yeah, I remember those days as well.
And tell us how long you've been writing for the Alabama Take now.
I was thinking about this. I think it's been a year. I feel like it's been longer, but I think it's just been maybe a year, maybe 2 years. Okay. I might have to look.
Well, and one of your articles is what's inspired the topic for the podcast today. So why don't you talk a little about that?
It's about the nonfiction and why. I think you said why don't people prefer nonfiction, or what was my article? Sorry.
It was nonfiction for fiction lovers.
Oh yes. Well, it's funny. I was telling my brother, it's funny that you chose me to do this because I'm nonfiction is not what I go to usually. Like I won't say make myself, but I make sure that I read a nonfiction book, a time or two. So yeah, that was what I wanted to post about because in fact, yesterday I started a book club with my friends, and yesterday at it, a friend of mine and I were talking about like, oh, I just can't make myself read nonfiction. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to post about it. That if you're not a big nonfiction reader, here are some books that you can start to make you read nonfiction.
Okay. Well, why don't we talk about quickly? I wanted to define narrative nonfiction because I think that's kind of the key to get some fiction lovers in the nonfiction game. So a narrative nonfiction is basically like it's a true story written like a novel. So it's like you still have your research and you still have your facts, but it's the way it's written. It leans more towards storytelling.
Exactly. Yep.
So what were a couple that you mentioned in your article?
Okay, so I have 3, and I think all 3 were in my article. I should have, now that I think about it, gone back and read my article. But the first one is You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey by Amber Ruffin and Lacey Lamar. Amber Ruffin's a comedian. She writes for Seth Meyers' late night show. He was on Saturday Night Live. And she also has her own show, or had her own show. I don't know if it's still on, but she's hilarious. Like, if you haven't checked her out, go on YouTube, look her up. She's really funny. And Lacey is her sister. And the book talks about mostly Lacey's experience as being the only person of color, woman of color, in their hometown of Omaha, Nebraska. And I've said it before. I think I said it in the article, but I've also said it when I talk about it with friends. It's the only book I've ever read that made me laugh hysterically, but also like enraged me, because you read it and you're like, how do these people say these things? Oh my goodness. But then it also made me check myself and kind of put mirror up to myself and say, am I saying these ignorant things? Am I saying any of this? So it's a great book. I I highly recommend it. It's really funny. It's a conversation between the two sisters, and it's like they're talking, like you're in on a conversation between them, you know, and they're telling these stories between themselves. And they just, you know, talk about what they've had to kind of, I guess, endure. Yeah, that would be the word. When they lived in Nebraska.
Okay. So. Okay, that sounds good.
My other one, and I think I put it in here. I'm a foodie. You can probably tell if you ever looked at me, but I love like any kind of food books, any memoirs, and I can't say that word. Very Southern.
I can't either.
Very
I can't
Southern
either.
When I say that word, memoirs.
It's like my favorite thing to read, but I avoid saying it like the plague on this podcast.
That genre. Anyway, so I love anything to do with food. Anthony Bourdain, like anything like that. So another one that I highly recommend is called Savor by Fatima Ali. She was on Top Shelf. She was a fan favorite, but she didn't win, but she was a fan favorite on there. And she had lived in Pakistan, and then she had moved to America, and she very much wanted to bring the food of Pakistan to the American palate. But unfortunately, she got cancer, and she passed away early. So this book came out after she passed away, and she ended up winning a James Beard Award for it.
Okay.
But after she passed away, and her mother and a journalist helped her finish the book. And so I don't tend to, when I'm reading a book, I'm like, oh, that's sad. But few books like actually make me cry, and this book did. But it's very good, and it's very immersive in the Pakistani culture and things like that. I highly recommend it. And then another one to go along with that, Rabia Chaudry. If you ever listen to if you ever listen to Serial, she helped get what's his. I'm blanking on his name. Syed. Yeah, she helped get him. She was best friends with his family and helped get him out of jail. And anyway, she wrote a memoir and called Fatty Fatty Boom Boom about her life with food and her relationship with food, her relationship with her body, and it's also her family is from Pakistan, so those two kind of go along with each other, but I recommend them as well.
I only recently, when I was working on a James Beard Award winners display at work, discovered that they give awards for the
books.
Yeah, and not just because I was like, well, the cookbooks, but then it was like. It was here I'm gonna have to say it was memoirs.
Just not our word.
No.
And then my third book that I wanted to talk about is called So You've Been Publicly Shamed by John Ronson. It was written in 2015, but I mean it could still be written today because it's about, he went and talked to people who usually did something ignorant or dumb online, and then they got hounded by either Twitter, or Instagram, or any kind of social media. And it's fascinating just to look at like our relationship with social media, groupthink on social media. So like one of the stories was a lady, and I don't remember the names, but she worked for a company and she was going on a trip to Africa, and I don't remember if it was a personal trip or a business trip, but she ignorantly tweeted, going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS. Yeah, exactly. And the minute she landed in Africa, it was just a hailstorm of things that, she shouldn't have said that.
Right.
But also she ended up losing her job and just all kinds of stuff that happened. And so he talked with her and the other two, that's the one that stood out to me, but there's other stories too. And he could easily like add on to that book because like that was 8 years ago, and our view of being canceled and all that stuff is changed, and what celebrities do online now, and there's TikTok, and so I loved that book, and it's very much it's like a story, but that's all happened. So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you read any true crime?
Have I read any true crime? I don't. I listen to podcasts that are true crime. My Favorite Murder is my favorite, but don't know. And I watch documentaries.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
That's a good question. I do not. I'll have to get some. Do you?
Yeah, I do. I do read a lot of it, and I kind of I've always credited Anne Rule's "The Stranger Beside Me." It's about her life being friends with Ted Bundy or working with him.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, that was kind of my gateway, I think, into nonfiction. And now I read a lot of true crime, and I've discovered that usually tends to read
to get people
in kind of a narrative style. Was it Helter Skelter was one, and I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara.
Yeah,
fantastic.
I've watched the documentary, which that one was excellent, but I have not read the book. I don't know if it but I love thrillers and mysteries, so I don't know why I haven't made the jump over to true crime books. That's something I need to think about.
It's pretty scary, but also it's really fascinating. Like, because you learn her story, as you go, and her obsession. She was Patton Oswalt's wife. Patton Oswalt.
Oswalt.
Yeah. And then she passes away before she finishes the book, and then he brought in people to help finish it, and it's just like the whole saga of how the book was written itself is interesting. So, and then another author who I really like is Erik Larson for narrative nonfiction.
Is that Into Thin Air?
Splendid in the Vial,
not Never mind.
Devil in the White City.
Yes. I knew that sounded familiar.
Yeah, and I think I've talked about it a couple of times on the podcast because it was goodness, I can't speak. It was recommended to me because of the true crime element.
Gotcha.
Because there is, I think it's H.H. Holmes. It's during the Chicago World's Fair, and they're building it, and then I just got absorbed into like them building everything for the fair, and like all of a sudden I cared about landscaping and things like that. So it really, really sucked me in. So I'm a big fan of him. And then I forgot I jotted this down. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil by John Brent.
I have read that book.
Yeah,
I have read that book. Yeah,
it's super good.
I've been to that house too. In Savannah.
Oh, you have?
Yes. It was awesome. Very cool. Like to go there after you've seen the movie, and I think I'd read the book by that time. So
yeah, it's super good. Well, why don't we pivot? And I didn't put this in the outline, so I just want to hear about some of your favorite books.
Okay,
like fiction. Yeah, let's go.
Well,
fiction.
Okay, that's not that I have a child, but I feel like that's like choosing your favorite child. Can I say in the last year? Is that okay? Can I get out my Goodreads?
You can.
Well, my last 5-star, and I was telling my friends about this. And let me get it. I've got the title alone. I have to get out my Storygraph because it's a long title. It is called All That Is Mine, I Carry With Me by William Landay. It is about a wife and mother who goes missing. It's in the 70s. And she goes missing, and her husband is a defense lawyer, and he has defended some really crummy guys. But he's a really good lawyer. And what I love about it is it's seen through different perspectives. It starts out through the perspective of the family friend who is an author. And so he's kind of on the outside looking in. Then it's seen through the eyes of the wife who has gone missing. And then it's seen through one of the sons who knows that the dad did it. He knows in his head that his dad killed his mom. And then it's seen through the dad kind of at the end of his life. He's got Alzheimer's, which that's a fascinating perspective. So you go back. I've read so many books that when I read mysteries, I'm like, I know what happens, and sometimes I don't care. But this one, you go back and for me, I went back and forth. I'm like, oh, I don't know what happened here. So I really, and the last couple pages, there was one line that I was like, oh my goodness, that was really, anyway, it was really good.
Okay.
Great. Highly recommend that one.
And tell us the title of it again.
I know, it's a mouthful. All That Is Mine, I Carry With Me by William Landay.
Okay.
Let's see. My other one that, Olympus, Texas, another one of my, favorite tropes, I guess. I don't know if tropes is the right word, but is family dramas. I love some family drama. make it seem that my family's not as crazy. But Olympus, Texas by Stacey Swann it's about this family, obviously in Texas. It's based off of Greek mythology. So there's, and I don't remember the names, but there's the dad and the mom, and they have 3 kids, I think, but the dad had stepped out on the mom, and he had kids outside of the marriage, and they all represent everyone out there that's listening that knows Greek mythology is like, hello, it's this, but he's obviously Zeus, and he, anyway, so they have kids, and one of the sons, when it starts, he's come back into the family after doing something horrible to his brother, and he wants forgiveness, but the brother doesn't want to give it, but the dad wants him to be forgiven, and the mom doesn't want to forgive him, and it's just a messiness, and I love it. Like I'm watching soap operas again as a kid. I love it. So that's my other 5-star. And then off the top of my head, my favorite books, why is Gone with the Wind coming to my head? I did love it, but that's like for some reason popping up into my head. Oh goodness. I wish I had I need a list in front of me.
Well, what do you, I'm trying to think, like when you were in, let's do this, because since you're a school librarian, so like when you were in high school, what were your favorite books?
Okay, so I vividly remember my senior year, I think I took AP maybe and English, and every year they give you a list. You have to read these. You have to read these, right? But that year we got a list and said you can pick whatever you want. And we got to pick. Me and a couple of my friends chose Catch-22.
Okay.
And I loved that book, and we all thought we were so grown up choosing that book.
Yeah.
And I still to this day love that book. And Hulu actually did a miniseries, I think, on it, and it was good.
Wait a minute. I think I watched that. Is that the one that's set in the war and it's got
World War II.
With the fella? What's his name? You'll see it. That was good.
And he's it's dark humor, I guess.
Yeah. That show was funny and bleak at the same time. I was really surprised. It was nominated, I think, for an Emmy. I always try to watch like
what's nominated
for like Golden Globes or Emmys or Oscars, and that was the only reason I watched that, and I just kind of fell into it. It was so good.
It was like my first glimpse into maybe this is how college will be. I'll get to read these grown-up books, not necessarily Romeo, and not that I don't enjoy Romeo and Juliet and Great Gatsby or whatever for what they are, but we got to choose what we got to read. And I remember getting to choose The Awakening, and that was her about her having an affair, and oh my goodness, scandalous. Remember that. Now, what I vividly remember reading is in high school and middle school. I mean, Babysitter's Club. I was that kind of girl.
Okay,
Babysitter's Club. What else? I wasn't a mystery like Nancy Drew, like some of my students love.
Did you miss? Are you too young for the Judy Blume?
I don't think I'm too young, but I honestly didn't read. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, till I was older. Which I need to watch that. Have you watched that?
No, but I've heard it's really good.
Yeah, I've heard that too. And there's also a documentary on her that I want to watch.
Yeah.
I didn't read her till I was older. I don't know why. Anyway, I guess my memory's not just great, but I just remember loving Sweet Valley High.
Oh, I love Sweet Valley
High. Yeah,
I loved it.
But those are the two like series that I really loved as a kid. I remember having.
I read Sweet Valley High when I was in early middle school, because it was a huge deal that it was high school and my mom let me read while I was in middle school. But then while I was actively reading it, they came out with the Sweet Valley Twins, which was set in middle school, which was even better. Like, I loved it so much. I used to read the Sweet Valley Mysteries. They had Francine Pascal has probably made $1 bazillion, and she deserves every cent because that was fantastic.
I also remember, speaking of, like I talked about crying, Where the Red Fern Grows.
Yeah.
And Bridge to Terabithia. and Maniac McGee. I remember those three.
Maniac McGee, I haven't thought about that book in ages.
Mm-hmm. Those three I remember reading too. And I coincidentally have all three in my library now, so it comes full circle.
Yeah. I was telling somebody the other day, like, school librarians just have always had a special place in my heart because my middle school librarian, like, I don't know that I would be a librarian today if it wasn't for her. And just the joy she had in putting the right books in the right kids' hands. And she was so good at it. And I was in elementary school when the Challenger exploded. And then a couple of years later, they released a biography about Kristen McAuliffe. And I was like obsessed with reading this book. And she knew it. And as soon as the book came into the library, she was like, I've got something, come here. And she was let me be the first person to like check it out. But, and then I saw her like a few years ago. She came into the library where I worked. And I was like, I tried to tell her like how important she was. Then I got all like choked up because I was just like, sometimes I'm like, do the school librarians get to hear it?
Not all the time. I mean, sometimes like I'll get little notes and from the kids on school library day. I got some notes from the kids, but I think the teachers made them too. But it was still very, very sweet, very, very sweet. So yeah, sometimes we do hear it. We're still not their homeroom teacher who made like adore, but sometimes I hear it. Yeah. Well, but that's still sweet that you wanted to tell her.
Yeah. I just feel like, I don't know. Once I hit like my late 30s, I was like, I don't know. It's like, I just kind of took stock of where I was like professionally and personally. And I was like, you just don't really realize who gets you to where you are. And who made like that impact and stuff. And also I was working with teens and I was seeing it firsthand, like what like the people in their lives who were important to them and who were making them try to be like just good people. I'm like, those folks are important. So
yeah, especially in those teenage years.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Okay, so I've picked your brain about all of the things on my list. So do you want to stick around and do our book news segment?
Sure.
All right. Well, we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. And we're back, and I'm here with my guest, Laura Lott, and we are going to talk about some book news. I'm not talking about banning books this month, unless that's what you brought to discuss.
No.
But I have worn it out the last 2 months, and it's just, there's good news and bad news and good news and bad news.
So always something.
I wanted to talk about let me make sure I get it right. The Fourth Wing?
Yeah.
Have
what
you
everybody's
heard of this?
talked about. Oh, yeah. It's everywhere. So I am in a Facebook group with another, it's through another podcast, but that's all they talked about for like a month was that book and how they couldn't get either they couldn't get it or they got it on Libby or they I haven't gotten it yet because I heard you couldn't get it.
You can't, Jennifer Kimbrough, who's been on this podcast a couple of times, like I texted her the other night and I was like, hey, what you doing? And she's like, thinking about Fourth Wing.
So she's read it. She did read it.
She's obsessed with it. Yeah. And it's so we're talking about Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, who I think this is her first novel.
I
may
think so.
Not be 100% on that, but yeah, so Jennifer was like, yeah, it's sold out on Amazon. Like she said all of these things that made me immediately like want this book.
I know.
So I've looked all over. I can't find it. I found a copy on Thrift Books, and let's just say they had one copy and the price was
out this world.
Highly elevated.
I sell books on, have you ever heard of Pango?
Yes.
Try on there, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
I haven't looked, but they might have some on there, and they keep their prices low because they want to actually sell them. So yeah, so try them there.
Yeah, I'll have to do that. But I'm just kind of excited to see what happens with this series. I mean, since it's taken off, and I know the next book comes out in November because Jennifer was talking about it too. So
I just like when books like a series comes out of nowhere because I think it kind of took everybody by surprise.
Yeah.
I kind of want to wait until the second one comes out because I'm one of those people. If it's really good as everybody says, I'll devour it and then get really mad that I don't have the second one in my hands. So I might wait.
Yeah.
Because I've got tons on my TBR anyway. So I might just wait till it comes out. The second one comes out and then read them back to back and then get mad that I don't have the third one.
That you don't have the third one, yeah. Did you happen to read Legendborn?
No, I haven't.
That's the name of it, I think. It was on like the YA bestseller list for like ever, and I had to read it in my YA class in library school, and it was a book with like a lot of like mythos, but it was the King Arthur.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, and it was like it just wasn't what I was expecting.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And it was super good. And I did that, like I finished it and I was like, hand me number 2, and then I had to wait a year, and then I was like, and then after I wait a year, I always want to reread the first one before going into it. And
see, I'm not a big rereader, but I don't remember stuff because I read too fast.
Okay.
So I'm like, should reread. Is this what was I gonna ask? Fourth Wing. Dang, I forgot what I was gonna ask. Well, never mind, I guess it'll come up later.
Did you have any book news you wanted to talk about?
Well, R.I.P. Cormac McCarthy. I don't know if have you ever read anything by him?
Yes.
Or McCarthy, yeah. Please tell me I said his name right. Have you ever read anything by him or
he wrote he would do The Road.
Yeah, The Road, which
I
remember it killing me when it came out. And then I think I've read all the Wild Horses by him, or all
the Pretty Horses.
Pretty Horses, yeah. The Wild Horses is a song, but yeah. So that's the only book news I can think.
Yeah,
but he was kind of older, so maybe he lived a good life.
I was making a sign. We do like like a memorial display, like when an author passes away, and I was making the sign for Julie Garwood. I've never read any of her books, but I was making the sign, and I had clicked over and like. It had just posted that like Cormac McCarthy had passed away, so I made 2 signs. But I was like, goodness gracious.
I think what's interesting about him, he didn't become famous till like later in life, as far as his books go.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I mean, if you're gonna be an author, you still got time. Friends.
You do. It's never too late.
Never too late. Never too late.
Well, now I want to talk about I'm calling it our books of the month. Are you in book of the month?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, rock on. So, our books of the month, just whatever. And I know you've already talked about a couple of 5-star books that you've read this month, but these are just 2 or 3 books that you've read recently that you really love. Not your TBR. That'll be a separate thing in a minute.
Okay, so what I've read recently.
Yeah.
Okay. I am, and I have been for a while. Have you ever heard of the Hannah Swenson series?
No.
So they're very much it's like they're mystery, but they're very like cozy mysteries. They all have foodie. They all have food related names. So the first one's called The Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder. And it's about a woman, called Hannah Swenson. She lives in Minnesota, I think, up north. Even though when I read it, they all have southern accents, but and she's a baker, but she always finds herself in the middle of a murder mystery that she wants to solve. And they're silly, but I love them. And I usually find myself reading it over the summer. I read them really fast. I pretty much always find out who the murderer is halfway through the book. I'm like, oh yeah, it's that guy. But I don't care. It's one of those, they're really good. I was talking with somebody. They're really good. Like if you're going through where you can't find anything to read, just pick up one of those.
Yeah.
Or like if you're in a book hangover where you just read like maybe The Fourth Wing and it's so good. Now if I can't find anything else to read, like it's those. I just got finished with it's called The Blueberry Muffin Murder.
Oh.
So they're just cozy, and they give recipes for all the cookies she makes.
Oh, okay.
So again, if you like foodie stuff, that's good. What Lies in the Woods, which we talked about.
Yes, yeah.
I read that one.
Did you really like it?
I gave it 4 stars.
That's what I gave it to.
I figured out, so without spoiling it, I feel like there was 2 mysteries. There was one she was trying to figure out, and then there was one she found out.
Yes.
And I figured out that one. Like I was like, oh yeah, that's what's going on with that. But the one she was trying to figure out, I went back and forth on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
What about you? Like,
It was kind of the same. And I had just come off of another really good thriller that I'll talk about in my recommendation. So I feel like if I had not just read the super duper good one, like I would have liked this one even better. But I mean, it was great. I'd recommend it. I like, I don't know. It seemed like, cause it's basically set up where there are 3 11-year-old girls and they're best friends, and there's like this tragedy that happens, and then it's how it shaped them, and there's a mystery around like who was involved and who was responsible, and it's just kind of different than all of these other thrillers I've been reading because of the child aspect, I guess.
Yeah, and I also feel like maybe you recognize it kind of reminded me of stuff I've heard about and like ripped from the headlines.
Yes. Yeah.
Without, again, spoiling anything. Yeah, like I've heard of stuff like that. But anyway, but but I gave it 4 stars. Like, I think it was fun.
Okay.
You know? Or not fun, but you know what I'm saying.
Did you get it from Book of the Month?
Yes, a long time ago. That's how I do, though. Like, I'll be like, oh, I want this one, this one, this one. And then won't read it for 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have so many books I need to read.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you get, or did you see the one this past month called My Murder?
No.
That one seems really interesting that I want to read. It's about, so another one of my tropes or whatever that I love is when it's our world, but something a little bit different about it. And this one is like, they can bring people back to life for a second so they can tell you about their murder or their death.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so this woman, housewife, had been murdered, and come to find out she was a part of a serial killer had killed her, supposedly. And so the government brings her back to life for however long, so she can tell what happened. And that's why it's called My Murder. So that's as much as I know about it, but that right there is like, oh, she can come back to life? Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I got it as one of my add-ons this past month.
So are you up to, can you get 5 now?
No, not yet. I don't think.
My goodness.
Hadn't tried yet.
My goodness. It just started, and you have to be like at I think BFF level or something.
Oh yeah, I don't think I'm there.
Like, it's just, it is so dangerous. Cause I was like, I'm going to have some self-control. And then I was like, I don't have to. And also it's cheaper. It is cheaper.
$10 for a hardback? Are you kidding me?
And it's
in this
almost
economy?
Guaranteed to be good. Like that was, I was telling my husband the other day, it's like, I know I'm not wasting my time. I know I'm not going to want to stop halfway through. It's just, it's going to be a good solid book. And,
yeah. And I mean, I hate to say this, but and I haven't for the past couple ones, if I don't really care for it, I mean, I'll just put it on Pango. I mean, and it sells because it's a book of the month.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. But I haven't had to for the last 3 or 4 that I've gotten. So,
yeah.
All good. Yeah.
Okay. Did you have another one?
Let's see. Oh yeah. I mentioned my Anthony Bourdain. This one was kind of unexpected because you don't see a lot of nonfiction on Book of the Month.
Right, right.
But it's called In the Weeds, Around the World, and Behind the Scenes with Anthony Bourdain by Tom Vitale. And he was Anthony Bourdain's producer / kind of director for his shows. And it's not necessarily food related, but just the experiences they had. I mean, I don't know if you ever watched his shows, but like towards the end there, he was going to places like a regular person off the street, just Joe Schmo didn't go to, like government people went to, military people went to, but he wanted to go to shine a light on it. So like, I don't know if he went to Syria. I now of course can't remember the places that he went to, but like Syria type places, you know what I'm saying? And so it was really interesting. And he didn't, like, I went into this thinking, are you going to try to make Anthony Bourdain seem like a saint? Because a lot of people try to, like, he's this perfect, but he really didn't. He was like, you can tell that he loved him because he worked so long with him, but he did not try to make him out to be this perfect person. Like he got in bad moods. He said words that weren't nice and stuff like that, but you could tell that they had this friendship along with their working relationship. So, I liked it. I will say I gave it a 4 just because he jumped around a lot and you're like, okay, where am I now? Because they went to so many places together. You're like, where are we in Vietnam now? We're in the Bahamas. Like, where are we? But it was really good.
Okay. I didn't even see that one on there. I need to.
I think it was an add-on.
Okay.
I go in the add-ons, and again, that's dangerous. Well.
Yeah. So my books of the month, I have 3. Oh, but one was What Lies in the Woods. The Last Word by Taylor Adams was a book of the month selection. It's a thriller. It is absolutely terrifying. However, I do want to say, the older I get, the more real life situations terrify me.
Samesies.
Yeah. Okay. So there is no supernatural element in this book at all. Everything, like, as it was happening to this woman, I was like, I could see it happening. This could totally happen. Also, the house was creepy. Like, it had like this, almost like I don't want to say like a rear window situation, but she's isolated except for she's got one neighbor, and they communicate through the window by writing on a whiteboard. So they've never even like talked in person. And and then just stuff just starts happening in it. And this isn't a spoiler. It happens like in the first 3 pages, but she wakes up and she thinks somebody's standing there watching her sleep. Yeah.
No,
I was reading it with the lights on, and I finally just migrated like my husband was watching wrestling or something, and I just moved into the living room to read, because I was like, this is absolutely terrifying. Also, I didn't find out until I finished the book, Taylor Adams is a man, and he wrote this woman so well. And sometimes like that's it's kind of a stretch, but it was super good. And that's The Last Word by Taylor Adams. And then my other book of the month is Quietly Hostile by Samantha Irby.
I love Samantha Irby. Oh my goodness. She's another one just makes me laugh out loud.
I was just like weeping like last night reading this book. And then today I was like, I read 2 excerpts to my husband. I never do that. And I was just like, listen to how funny this is. Because there's one part where she talks about going to a Dave Matthews concert.
Yes. Spoke to my soul. Spoke to my soul. I wanted to send it to my friend Fatima and I, who used to go to Dave Matthews concerts all the time. I was like, I don't know if this book is for you, but I need you to read this chapter.
Yeah. And she calls him David Matthews like that.
Oh, she's so funny.
She is hilarious. And she has 2 other books, and I had read one. Her first one was fantastic because it was before she had gotten really famous and popular. She just had like a blog or something, I think, maybe. And she was working at a vet.
Big on Twitter too.
Yes, yeah. But she was working at a veterinarian, and she had this like just angry little cat. And it's on the cover of the book. And we will never meet in real life. I think that's what that might have been called. But it was really funny. But yeah, and this one is great too. And it's Quietly Hostile by Samantha Irby. So now let's shift to our TBR list.
TBR.
What you got on yours?
But I'll just pick one. It's the one that I brought with me. It is, and I of course lost my notes. It is called If We're Being Honest by Kat Shook. It's about this family, me and the family dramas. They have come together for a funeral of their dad. And so they all have their own like issues that they're dealing with, issues from the past, current issues. But then at the funeral, and it's set in Georgia, so it's a Southern, novel or whatever. But at the funeral, the dad's best friend gets up and he drops like a truth bomb that none of them knew about. And I would say don't like look it up to see what it is, because I accidentally found out what it was, and I'm kind of mad that I know now. But and so that kind of throws everything into a tailspin. So I'm kind of excited to read that one. That's next on my list. It's in my backpack, ready to go.
That's good. All right. Mine is a book called Encounterism: The Neglected Joys of Being in Person by Andy Field. It is a nonfiction book, and it basically is about everything that I hate. So it's like, because I am a total introvert, like big time. And this is about like the importance of human touch and interacting with strangers and like really getting in there and making that connection. So I'm like, this book is going to make me uncomfortable and it's outside my comfort zone, but it also talks about why it's important. So
Well,
I'm
good
like,
for you.
hopefully it'll ease that a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, Laura, thank you for being here. Do you have anything coming up for the Alabama Take? Are you working on writing anything?
I was thinking about, I'm sure that everybody will be doing this, but just doing my favorite books so far, which I've kind of already talked about on here, so it won't be a surprise. So far for the year 2023 is probably what I'm going to be doing.
Oh, yeah, because we're halfway through this.
We're halfway through the year. Can you believe it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll be watching for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
no,
this was fun. Thank you so much. Yeah. So we'll have to have you on again.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. That's it for this episode of Check Your Shelf. If you want to hear more discussion about Cormac McCarthy's work, check out the latest episode of Taking It Down. Otherwise, we'll see you in August where we're talking about sports books with a very special guest who has a very exciting announcement.